Hello and welcome to the first episode of a brand new series that we're calling From the Collection. And in this series, what I'm going to be doing is focusing in on either a specific toy or a specific small grouping of toys from the Analog Toys collection, giving you a little bit of a history about the toy and how it came to be in our possession. And for this first episode, we're discussing Mego, Starsky and Hutch. Hey toy fans, my name is Tony and welcome back to the Analog Toys YouTube channel. Now while I am a collector of vintage Mego, my primary focus is the World's Greatest Superheroes line and Star Trek figures. I'm not so much a collector of all the figures that Mego started to produce based on all the other licenses, because let's face it, they licensed a lot of stuff throughout the 1970s. But I found these one day on eBay Australia, the pair. They were sealed, carded, unpunched, and they were going for $50. And I thought, I'll chuck a $50 bid on them. If I win, great. I wasn't expecting to, and I ended up winning them. And I hadn't even taken a very close look at these figures until they arrived. I don't believe in the listing, it actually showed a photograph of the back of the cards. But the first thing to note about these Starsky and Hutch figures is the back of the card only features the cross-sell for Starsky and Hutch. That tells you that this is a first release of these figures, 1975 first release, because the later release figures, the card backs also had a cross-sell for Captain Dobie, Huggy Bear and Chopper, who was like a generic bad guy. Another really interesting thing to note on these particular figures, another thing that I didn't note until I actually had them in hand, is that these are actually imported into Australia back in the 70s by Toll Toys, who was a distributor. Toll Toys distributed Palitoy Action Man here in Australia. Kenner Star Wars was all sold under the Toll Toys banner. And when these were sold in Australia, they simply applied a sticker on the bottom of the card that says Toll Toys, and there's a small little kangaroo there at the end, so you know that this is an Australian distributed toy. One of the somewhat frustrating things for me out of this pair of action figures is that Starsky, you can actually see when he was originally packaged, because this is sealed, never been opened, when he was originally packaged, his body is kind of all twisted round to one side. There's no real way for me to contort it back into a better pose without damaging the blister. I obviously don't want to do that. So I just have to live with Starsky here being a little bit drunk on duty, I suppose. Now both of these card backs also feature some really nice artwork of their signature Gran Torino car, what they used to call the striped tomato. I think that's what they called it, the striped tomato. However, when these figures were released in the United Kingdom under Palitoy, as Palitoy often did with most of their Mego imported figures, they updated the artwork, and Palitoy artwork on Mego cards is some of the best card art, action figure toy card art of the 1970s. And as you can see in this image here, courtesy of the Mego Museum, which I highly recommend checking out, you'll find a link to megomuseum.com in the description below. There's a beautiful piece of art on this card back that shows the title characters from the TV show instead of the Gran Torino. Now obviously Starsky and Hutch was a very popular television program in the 1970s, based around a couple of detectives fighting crime. So weirdly enough, the Mego version and the Australian Toll Toys release of these figures, they never came with guns. I know there's a lot of talk in the modern day with modern collectors about action figures coming from companies like Hasbro and that should have guns and don't have guns. But this was back in the 70s when we weren't quite so politically correct. So why didn't these figures actually come with guns? Because without guns, they're basically just dolls on a card back. To me, part of it, I think, is that the intended play pattern for these figures was for them to be used in conjunction with the Gran Torino toy. This toy came with a bunch of accessories. It was like it had like a bump and go type motor included, and that would have been a lot of fun. But certainly, if I had become the lucky owner of these figures when I was a child, I would have been disappointed that they didn't come with pistols. And I guess the management at Palitoy thought the same thing, because although these figures were available on single figure card backs in the Palitoy line without pistols, there's also a very rare twin pack of these figures that came in a solid box, again with beautiful artwork from Palitoy. And as you can see here, they both came with a pair of pistols. So while I'm definitely not like a huge Starsky and Hutch fan, at $50 for the pair, they weren't $50 each, it was $50 for the pair, and then to find out that they have, they're a rare variant with the Toltoy sticker, I'm very pleased to have these in the collection. And they do sit on the end of my dedicated Mego shelf, which is mostly popularized by the superheroes in Star Trek. They can sit there on the end. I'm very happy to have them in my collection for the time being. One day I may move them along, may make some good trade bait one day. But for now, I'm happy to have Starsky and Hutch in the collection of Analog Toys. So thank you all for watching the first episode of From the Collection from the Analog Toys YouTube channel. If you would like to be able to vote on the topic of future episodes, you can join our Patreon. There are a number of different tiers, but for just $1 a month, you can get access, 24 hours of early access to all of our upcoming feature videos, and you'll be able to vote on the poll for future episodes of From the Collection. I'm Tony from Analog Toys, and I'll see you in the next video.